Yeah, beautiful. Thank God. We're in Daf Mem Vav, Amud Aleph. We're toward the bottom of the page. Last we had mentioned the idea that someone who does not have access to lighting the Hanukkah candles would still make a bracha when they see the Hanukkah candles that someone else lit out in the street. In fact, if it's the first night of Hanukkah, they make the two brachot, She'asa Nisim and Shechianu. So just to cap it off, we have a short Tosfot at the bottom here, and then we're going to continue in the Gemara. So the Tosfot here points out that this is not true for other mitzvahs. If you see someone taking a lulav in their hand and you don't have a lulav, you don't say a bracha seeing them take a lulav. And Sukka, take the examples from our Masechta. So how come when it comes to the Yom Tov of Hanukkah, right? We're making an extra bracha. Tosfot, right? B'shar mitzvot kigon alulav v'sukkah lo takin levarach l'roeh ela gabi ner Hanukkah mishum chavivut hanes.
Wait, you're on the
last Tosfot of the page.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I jumped ahead. Yeah, last Tosfot on the page. Mishum chavivut hanes. Answer number one: it's something that people really love. I mean, that's a reason. That's a reason. They love them. We love the nace. Make a bracha. All right, you already had a comment, or?
I think the answer is much more straightforward than that, or at least it seems that the bracha is not the bracha on Asher Chichan Mitzvah Kavitzivanu, it's Sha'asa Nisim.
Fair enough. We don't have a bracha for other mitzvahs in their observation.
Right.
So the question is, how bound up is the bracha of Sha'asa Nisim Lavotena B'Yom Hazeh with the act of lighting? And the answer is not so much.
Yeah.
But there was a Havamina you could have said it's very much bound up with lighting. By the by, there's a machloket about when do you say the bracha Sha'asa Nisim when you light the Hanukkah candles. I saw in the notes by Herschel Reichman, should live and be well. He wrote up his Rabbi's notes, Maran Rav Yozdov Levi Soloveitchik, because that's how it says there that they don't make the bracha Sha'asa Nisim until they finish lighting all the Hanukkah candles. That's not what most of us do, I think, right?
Yeah.
Most of us, we make the bracha, then we start to light. But there's a good case to be made. Sha'asa Nisim means that you saw something, just like the Birkat HaRoeh. The more you front load it, right? Make Shechianu because it's the day, fine. But the more you front load it and you say that both brachot, the bracha on Asher Kisham Tzad Lahalik Neshachanukah and Sha'asa Nisim comes before you perform the action, the more you're saying that the action that you're going to do in prospect is bound up with the themes you just articulated in the bracha.
You guys are fruit. You make the bracha before you take a bite.
Exactly. By the way, could you have made a good case? Oh, it's taking us off topic, but you can make a good case. You should take a bite of the orange and then make a bracha, maybe. Birkat hanehanin, I was nana. No, the Gemara says no, dafka not. Dafka before you're nana mina olam. Otherwise, it's a trespass. It's meila. But at least here, you make a bracha on the dvar sha'asa nisim. So what is showing us that there was a nace that we lit the candles before? And in fact, the roa in the street is going to make the bracha on something that's already lit.
The similar machloket on Shechianu Adyantiv, you make the Shechianu before you light the candles, after you light the candles.
Yeah, Shechianu also. Yeah. So first answer in Tosfot. For those just joining us, nice to see you all. Baruch Rofei Cholim, David, nice to see you. Okay, everybody should just be well. We're on the bottom Tosfot on 46a, the bottom Tosfot. The question on the table was, why don't we make a bracha when we don't perform other mitzvahs? We see someone else doing it, and the answer is Hanukkah is special. Chavivut hanes. People love the nace of Hanukkah. They're very connected to it.
Yes.
And there are also people who are homeless. They don't own a home, and therefore maybe they don't have to light Hanukkah candles because they have nowhere to light them. Not maybe, they can't. Ve'ein biyadim l'kayim ha-mitzvah. And they have no way of performing the mitzvah. But Tosfot would say, between these two answers, we prefer the first answer. V'tam rishon nicha. The first one is a better answer. Why? Lo tikshele mezuzah. Because otherwise you could say, well, maybe when you see someone's mezuzah, if you don't own your own home, you're homeless, God forbid. So you see someone who has a mezuzah on their door, maybe you should make a bracha on that. No, we don't say that, but why not? I can't perform the mitzvah, I should make a bracha. No, the first reason is because chavivut ha-mitzvah. There's no chavivut ha-mitzvah, a nace rather, not of the mitzvah, excuse me, of the nace. For the Hanukkah, for the mezuzah. Go. Mark's got the floor. Yehuda, you're next. Yeah.
If you don't have a home, you're not obligated in mezuzah. But you are obligated
you could make the argument, you're obligated, well, don't, hang
On, yeah,
You could make the argument.
yeah.
That you're obligated to remember the Knicks.
Oh,
So.
Yeah.
To do, thank you.
to publicize it and to say Shechianu, and yeah, that's good.
So
Yeah.
that's different, so that already would have a different status, I wouldn't make that comparison, not that Tosfos is, God forbid.
No, I got it, but maybe
I would-
maybe that's the point of Chavivut Hanes, that it has to do with the fact that there's a miracle.
Right, I mean, I look.
Did you hear that on the phone?
Anyway, sorry.
What he said? You did hear, okay, they heard you, make sure they heard you.
I was trying to look at Pesach, where that's what we have the Nisim that we sort of are back and forth on, to look to see is there another situation where we might make someone, but the problem there is we're actually doing the actions.
Right, there's a Shiloh on Pesach, they should say the Bracha Shasanisim, and the answer is no.
Right.
Although some say maybe that's the Birkat HaGeula that we say at the end before the second cup, something like that. But there is an analog in Purim.
Well, no, because by Purim, even if you don't have a home, you can hear the Megillah. So I mean, it's.
No, the notion of Chavivut Hanes, though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I'm just saying the Chavivut Hanes part is, also, this is some.
The next part, but the bracha comes with hearing the.
Yeah,
Megillah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
nobody would have to make the bracha on their own.
Right, but the question there again could have been asked. Maybe Shasanisim. No one says. I don't think that Shasanisim should be after you finish reading the Megillah.
Right.
Right. So there, it's like Amikra Megillah and Shasanisim go together, just like Lahadik Neshel Chanukah goes with Shasanisim. Those are just saying, look, we like the first answer better. The second answer, you could ask me a question. Well, if it's about not having a house, I like what you said. Don't forget the formulation of Masachet Shabbat for Chanukah is a quizzical one. The mitzvah is Ner Ish Ubeito. So is it Ner Ish Ubeito? It's like the mitzvah is on you and also on your household, or is it Ner Ish Ubeito means it's a candle for the person as long as you have a house. And if you don't have a house, no mitzvah. Nafkamina is all over the place for homeless people, for traveling people, for people renting properties, for overnight, they're not staying, all different things. And we'll leave it for Hanukkah, which is Haba Alinu Latova. My house, we're already getting excited for Hanukkah. It's a few weeks away.
I have.
That's really what's happening. They're really counting up. Like, oh, it's the 20th of March. Oh, we're almost there. Yeah. Judah, you waited so
I
patiently.
was going to say something about Hanukkah being so special is because we have the obligation לפרסום הנס. מוציאים את החנוכיה מחוץ לבית כדי שיראו את זה. זאת אומרת, הרואה is not that off anymore.
Yeah.
It's kalul in that minhag.
It's good. That's right. Yeah. Well said. Well said. It's a gesund. Well said. Another question, Mark? Did you hear what he said? Were you able to hear what Judah says? Yeah.
When you say ubeito, I thought the implication is your family. You're talking.
Well, that's part of the question. Is a man his family? Is a man his household, the physical structure? Is it really on the person? And it so happens that the framework for it is to buy it. Is it more on the person or more on the house? L'may nafkamina, how many chanukiot do you like? There's all the issues, but they're very much bound up with those words, ner ish ubeito. Then what's hidur, what's right? The mahajim and mahajim, etc. Another question? Okay. On the bottom line of 46a, last line. V'od yesh lefarish. Dein shayach l'takin l'roa bracha she'ena osem mevarech. Also, it's not shayach. It just doesn't add up to start enacting a bracha for someone who sees something that the person who's actually doing the action themselves isn't making that bracha. So in other words, the havamina here, like what bracha would Chazal make up with seeing someone else take a lulav, seeing someone else let's go into the sukkah. There has to be a bracha that the person who's actually performing the mitzvah is also themselves making. And this is sort of an extension off it. That's the last point they're making. It's too far afield to say Chazal should make up a new bracha for the context of someone who's not performing a mitzvah, just watching it happen. Again, Tosfot seems to have already indicated though, Chavivut Hanes, that's the controlling idea. And therefore there's two brachot. You don't have it for other mitzvahs really where you see it. This is a good segue into the next section of the Gemara, which asks us to ask ourselves, what's the point of a Birkat mitzvah? And where this comes up is where we have multiple mitzvah objects sitting in front of you. You're going to engage all of them. How many brachas should you make? We know the answer because we know what we do. Fine. But just on the level of ideas, there's at least a havamin, and that's the Gemara goes into next. Maybe when I have a slew of objects in front of me, maybe I just have to make a bracha al ha-mitzvot, because they're all here, which begs the question, sort of like, well, what's the point of the bracha? If someone were to ask you, why do you make a bracha on a mitzvah? You're doing the mitzvah because the Torah said so. I got it. So what is that? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam v'shekar shalom tzivanu. The Rabbanan, even I can make a case. You have to do it because we want to emphasize and amplify the theme of, we talked about last time, lo tasur, or according to the pasuk in Ha'azinu, which I will pledge to make better efforts not to butcher, because I do care about these things. Sha'al avicha v'yagedcha, not v'yagedcha. I was wrong last time, so I'm saying for the record, everyone should hear v'yagedcha, with thanks and appreciation to the sensitive listeners. No, really, it's important. Well, the people on the line, so I'm going to hear also, not just the people who are with us in the room. V'yagedcha, like Melashon Haggadah. Anyway, the point is, there you get it, but you're doing a mitzvah in the Torah. Why are you putting on tzitzit? Because the mitzvah in the Torah. But there seems to be an emphasis, there has to be a bracha. Okay, so now, does the bracha have to be specific to that mitzvah? What would the case be to say, I'm going to make, I have my talit, I have my tefillin shalyad, tefillin shosh, I'm going to make one big bracha on them all. What would the svara be? I'm throwing it out there.
That's all one mitzvah.
Okay, we'd like to say it's all one mitzvah. The problem is the
It's
Torah
not.
has a special parsha for tefillin. According to the Rambam, it's two separate mitzvahs, tefillin shalyad, tefillin shel rosh. And so you'd make the bracha sort of al ha-mitzvot, indicating there's a plurality of mitzvahs. Tzitzit obviously in its own parsha as well. But the question is, what's the havamina? You can see the line in the Gemara. It's where are we here? Like 2, 4, 5. Tana Rabban hayu lefanav mitzvah harba. The beginning of the line is chazina le. So we saw that was the end of the discussion, that whatever we're going to do about Shechianu is here and there. Rav Kahana made the bracha Shechianu when he sat down with his kos yayin on the night of Sukkot. That's when we say Shechianu doesn't happen some other time. So then the Gemara says, Tana Rabban hayu lefanav mitzvot harba. Omer Baruch Asher Geshalom mitzvotav v'tzivanu ala mitzvot. You're saying Hashem commanded us all these mitzvot. They're separate mitzvahs, but I only need one bracha. I'm batching them together. I don't take God's name in vain, and I'm going to get the same net result in the recitation of one bracha on all these mitzvahs. What do you think, Francie? Give a guess. I think it's the right answer.
I think you lose the emphasis.
Right. That's why we don't do
The
it.
mitzvah, when you
Put them all together.
all group together.
A basket.
Right. You lose it.
Hmm.
Lose it.
Can you repeat
Yeah,
what Mark?
Francie pointed out, if you put all the fruit in the basket together, you make one bracha, you're kind of losing the emphasis of every individual mitzvah.
Oh.
Right?
What about sometimes you're not doing them all together? Like constant filling, you're not doing all always together.
Let's say you're doing it sequentially, one after the other.
No, I mean like Shabbos, you're not even doing filling, so you just.
Oh,
do it
oh.
now. So you-
Yeah, but we'll just make up a case. We have multiple objects in front of you at the same time. You have to do all the mitzvahs at the same time. You, I don't know, you're gonna,
You have a basket of fruit, one for it, the other, one for it, the other.
right, well, if you have two fruits with two brachot, we have a taxani brachot ananin, right? And so that's also an issue, right? If you have grapes and dates and oranges, it's still ha'etz, one bracha for all of them. So there you can make a different argument here. So, and that's the question. We don't say that for the mitzvahs. Aren't all these things mitzvahs? Now Rashi tells us groups of mitzvahs. He says, let's say you have in front of you, it's Rashi, Dibur Matchel, Mitzvot Harbe. What are they? He gives examples. Lito Lulav, Leisha Sukka, Laniach Tefillin, Teif Batzitzit. 4 different mitzvot, let's say, are right all in front of you right now. Right? From here, by the way, there's a big like hue and cry. Look what Rashi said. When do you perform all these 4 mitzvahs? Sukkah, Lulav, Tefillin, and Tzitzit. How could all 4 of those be at the same time? Unless you hold
Cholamoid.
Tefillin and Cholamoid. That big boost for everyone, right? Comes the Binyan Sion.
I don't see the Rashi.
Rashi, Dibur Matchel Mitzvot Harbe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines up from the bottom. 6 lines up. Rashi on 46a. 6 lines up from the bottom. It's right on the margin. See it? Lulav, Leisha B'Sukkah, Laniach Tefillin, Litatef Batzitzit. This was like a big boon for the people who wanted to argue, as the Ramah does. You have to wear tefillin, Cholamoid. So came the Binyan Sion, Rabbi Yamin Ettlinger, and he says that that's not really accurate. That the reason why these 4 are grouped together is to show that it's a group of 2 and a group of 2. Leisha B'Sukkah and Lulav, they go together, and Talit and Tefillin, they go together. Take it or leave it. I mean,
Even those who say you put on tefillin on Chol Hamoed, don't make a bracha on it, which ruins the argument.
yeah. Oh, good point. Oh, that's good. Did you hear what Art just said? No bracha Chol Hamoed anyway. For those of us who don't put on tefillin on Chol Hamoed, we don't make a bracha, we don't put them on. So I didn't even know that. Thank you. Anyway, there's a hava meaning here a little bit, like the birchad hananin. If I didn't make the bracha on the fruit, I trespassed against that which belongs to Hashem. Right? That's la Hashem haaretz umlo'ah. And then did I pronounce it okay? We're good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And alternatively, Hashemayim Shemayim la Hashem haaretz natan livnei adam. So. Okay, one's before kan kodem bracha, kan la'achar bracha, before and after the bracha. Everything belongs to Hashem before. We ask, right? It's separate sugya and birchad. But birchad mitzvah, I have a commandment to do the mitzvah. Let's say a person would pick up the lulav and they didn't make a bracha. They yotze the mitzvah? Of course they yotze the mitzvah. Why did Chazal put in a bracha, birchad mitzvah? Focus. I want to focus us. I'm not just stam picking this thing up. I'm not stam wrapping these leather straps and putting them on. It's a mitzvah. No, I give you credit. I give you credit. And that's exactly what you were saying.
I feel bad for the person who counts mitzvahs and says, I have to make 100 brachas a day. You can be absurd.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do?
I'm just saying.
But okay, you try. We try. It doesn't have to be a mitzvah, but give me different mitzvahs. And the Gemara here has this machloket, right? There's a havamina. Maybe it should be one mitzvah, ala mitzvot. All the mitzvot, one bracha, and I encapsulated what I'm planning to do, which is all of the following 5 things I'm going to do are all mitzvahs. And I said that, and that's what I had to do. No, the other opinion says no. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, mevarach al kol achat v'achlif ne'atzma. Each one needs its own bracha. That is what we do. Lulav, Sukka.
They try to compare it to birchas haTorah, and then we make, well, that we said birchas haTorah,
In the morning.
in the morning.
And it applies the whole day.
Okay, you don't make a bracha every time you open up your Gemara.
True enough. But the next day, you do.
Are you trying to make a comparison there? Like, yeah.
Good question.
They say the reason for that is that in theory your mind is never off in Torah.
Yeah.
Even when you're at work, you're thinking of
Latent awareness. Rabbi Soloveitchik called latent awareness. Made one bracha counts the whole day. We Mark had a comment or question.
I'm just going to tie it back to the whole Al-Anisi thing
Uh-huh.
for a second. So
Shasanisi.
maybe an analogy would be, I wake up in the morning and I look at my date time and I say, okay, I'm gonna eat breakfast. So I say, okay, Barimi Nazot.
The mizonot is in the morning and
So I'll say.
still at derech now.
I should have planned on my morning. In the morning.
Right.
Right, and another doubting, I had to go away.
You batch them.
So I haven't done one bracha, but I've done one time of it all, even though I haven't done the actions yet.
Right.
That, to me, it's an interesting comparison to what the Gemara was saying about Al-Nisim, because you haven't done the action yet.
Shasanisi, you mean?
Right.
Alanis, Shasanisi. Yeah. Because you haven't done the action yet.
Right, Shasanisi. Right, you haven't done the action, you've observed the action, you know the action is going to take place, yet you're still doing that, giving that bracha.
Right. And the sequencing matters. No, this has to be what's called overla siyata. You're going right in to do the action. That's very important. If there's too long of a span between one and the other, it gets nullified. Right. So you got to kind of make it flow. Right. It's got to kind of go from one to the other. Ronnie had a question.
Isn't that the same?
Wait, Ronnie had his hand up first and then
Yeah.
Ira. Ronnie and Ira. Go.
W-
Mazel tov,
um,
Ronnie. We
wouldn't-
waited for Mazel tov.
Thank you. Wouldn't saying you have the food in front of you and that's not counting bread. If you say shahako, and you had mizonos in front of you and you had adama and ha'etz, and once you say shahako, you're done saying brachos.
We had a whole shear on this for a year, actually, in the seeds, right? In the seeds shear that I gave Tuesday, I used to give it Tuesday mornings with health food, the donuts and the coffee and brachas. We did a whole year. So Art just said, b'diavad, that's true. And if you don't know the word brachas, that's true. But really, let's say you had in mind on the shahakol, you can't really say that you did it. Okay, now I don't make any brachas. If you have in mind for that specific item, then it would be limited. If you said, back to Francis' example, you had the whole basket, they're all the same bracha or something, or it's multiple brachas, but you decide I'm saying shahakol on everything, that happens to be true. But we would tell somebody you should prioritize the Zayin Minim, you should prioritize the Chamishit Minei Dagan, right? Not Hamotzi. It's Hamotzi, so that is the catch-all, right? The point here is you want to do this not for Birchot HaMitzvah, where the point of the Sher Kiddushanu Mustav Tzivanu Al HaMitzvot, that was the Havamit, that's the Tanakhama's view, is this catch-all, everything I'm about to do in sequence, not, by the way, contra what Mark was saying. I don't think it would work. You could say it in the morning and like it's the whole day. Or Francie's point is Birchat Torah. So as Art pointed out, what Rabbi Soloveitchik, I'm putting words in Art's mouth, but Soloveitchik called it latent awareness. You said in theory, it's never out of your mind. He called it a latent awareness. The mother knows where her child is, even when the child is far away from the mother. It's always in the back of her mind. She's thinking about the child. Latent awareness. It is the same thing with Talmud Torah. But back here in mitzvahs, generally, it's a mitzvah masiyot, not Talmud Torah. And that's why the examples Rashi gave are not Talmud Torah, latent awareness, but discrete actions. Sukka, Lulav, Tefillin, Talit. These things have a bracha, and you put them on, or you hold them, or you go into them, right? And the point is that Rabbi Yehuda disagreed. We follow Rabbi Yehuda here. He says, I'm Rabbi Zeir, Rabbi Chanina bar Papa, Hilchot Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Chanina bar Papa, my time at Rabbi Yehuda. What's the rationale of Rabbi Yehuda? Dichtiv, because the pasuk teaches us. You have a pasuk in Tehillim, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, right? So we Yamoslanu Hakel Yeshua Tenu Sela. Yeah, we say it every day. Sidra. So blessed is God day by day. Do you mean to tell me we're only going to give the bracha to Hashem in the day and not the nighttime? No. Rather, what this pasuk means is b'chol yom v'yom tein lo me'ein berchotav. On the day that is appropriate for that bracha, give Hashem that bracha. What bracha is that? Rashi, shel Shabbat me'ein shel Shabbat, shel chol me'ein shel chol, shel yom tov me'ein shel yom tov ha'me'ora. Meaning the point is, each day has a specific type of bracha. Use it. So the Gemara goes on to say, hachanami. Here also, not just b'chol yom v'yom, but b'chol davar v'davar. Tein lo me'ein birchotav. Now, with each and every object, let the bracha be specific to that action. The point of the birchot mitzvah is to focus us, that we shouldn't think we're just stop doing rote actions. So, of course, the history of halacha. What happened? We decided it's beautiful and it's great. You know what we'll put in? We'll put in a hini muchar mezuman before we say the birchot mitzvah, because the birchot mitzvah, everybody's and you do the mitzvah and you didn't think about it. Well, add hini muchar mezuman, everybody will think about the mitzvah. But maybe we should put a l'shem yichud kudsha brichu shchinte before. So now you have l'shem yichud kudsha brichu shchinte, then you have the hini muchar mezuman, and then you have the bracha. And what do we have now? And they do the mitzvah. The tamid kacha. That is what essentially. It's a little bit of a caricature. This is essentially what happened. I'm not trying to knock the muchar mezuman and l'shem yichud. They're very important. I'm not taking them away. Whoever says them, you say them. It's good. But you understand that Chazal's original idea was we'll make a one-liner. It'll be very simple. Okay, maybe not the bracha and kiddushin, but generally, or birchot Torah. But generally, it's a one-sentence thing. It's what I'm going to do. It's the fact that I was commanded, Hashem, you're the king of the universe, the master of the world, and you commanded to sanctify us to the mitzvahs, and here's the mitzvah I'm going to do. Yeah? Havamina, just make one on everything you're about to do. Let's assume it's over l'siyatan. You're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, a sequence. Still not good enough. We pass in Rabbi Yehuda, each mitzvah gets its due. Ira, I'm sorry, I forgot you before in the queue.
No, it's fine. I just don't want to belabor the point. I just have a quick comment, and that is, would the kiyash, when you blow shofar and you hold the shofar, when you make the brachot on the shofar, you say all the three brachot before you actually
two brachot.
I'm sorry, 2 brachot.
The bracha of the Lishma kol shofar and
Lishma kol shofar, and then shechianu.
Yeah.
So the question is, when you make those brachot, you're supposed to hold the shofar, right? Because you're
I do.
Okay.
Around does too. You hold it in the main. I don't know the other minute. Yeah.
No. So then when after you make the concept is after you make the 2 brachot, then you do the action. So then you do the.
Well said.
Okay.
Yeah, and yes, the over l'siyatan. That's the idea of holding it in hand. Also, you're about to do the mitzvah, right?
Okay.
By the by,
Right.
Lulav, the Rambam holds. You just make the bracha and then you pick it up. You can pick up in sequence or whatever, right? What do? We pick it up with the upside down because there is an inyan to hold it in your hand before you make the bracha. Yeah,
Right.
for sure. Okay, once Rabbi Zera was quoted, the associative principle of Shas gets underway. Second to last line. V'amar Rabbi Zera v'yitzim Rabbi Chanina bar Papa. Right? It's a stay in Rabbi Zera. Some says Rabbi Chanina bar Papa. Bo reish lok midat Kadosh Baruch midat basar v'dam. See how the attribute of a Kadosh Baruch Hu is unlike the one of humanity, of flesh and blood. Midat basar v'dam, kli reikan machazik, malay einu machzik. If you have in the world in general, if you have a vessel in your home and the vessel is empty, it can have things added to it. Whatever you'll put into it till you fill the capacity. If it's full, that's it. It can't accommodate anymore. But by Hashem, it's and his Torah, it's the opposite. Right? But the midah of Kodesh Baruch Hu is that a malay is machzik. If you have a full vessel, yet more can be put into it. If it's an empty vessel, it will not hold its charge. It will not hold whatever you're trying to put into it. What does that mean? Shenemar, vaya im shamoa tishma. This is a pasuk from Devarim Perek Chavchet, right? Vaya im shamoa tishma b'kol Hashem lokach lishmo la'asot et kol mitzvotav asher anuchi mitzavcha hayom unetancha Hashem elokecha elyon al kol goyei haaretz. So the Gemara explains im shamoa tishma. If you have listened in the past, you'll hear in the future as well. You're receptive. There's a certain momentum that's created. V'im lav, but if you didn't listen, so lo tishma. Rashi, look at the top of the page, right, left-hand side. Masik mashenotim l'tocho. That's in the world. That's for us humans. Physical capacity can be removed. The volume is filled. Male enu masik mashe tosif. You can't add more once the vessel is filled. But for Hashem, im shamoa tishma, im hurgalta lishmoa az tishma tuchal lilmod ulohosif. If you are accustomed to listening and you're habituated to that, then you'll also be able to hear in the future, i.e., to learn new things. In your childhood, if you never paid attention, you didn't care. So you won't be able to hold on to your learning. I'm back in the Gemara now, line 4 of the Gemara. Halfway through the line, davar acher im shamoa biyashan tishma bechadash. If you heard the old, you'll hear the new. What is hear the old? So Rashi there, last of the wide lines of Rashi, the top, before it becomes narrow. The last word there, right? Machazer al tumutcha sheshamata. You have to do chazara. That's what it means. Im shamoa biyashan tishma bechadash means you have to do chazara. Tishma bechadash. You'll be able to tease out through you'll become more wise. Lahavim dvarim chadashim means to understand new things, new aspects. If you're learning from the old things that you learned, right? To say it differently, if you learn the parsha this year and you learn it well, then you go back next year and you learn the parsha well, you'll know it even better because you'll be able to draw upon an existing body of knowledge. And you're doing what seems like chazar, but really you're learning new things. Im shamoa tishma, right? Im shamoa biyashan tishma bechadash. Yeah. Okay. V'mifnei levavcha shuv lo tishma. If you're going to, you're going to empty your mind. Also a pasuk, right? A pasuk in Dvarim Perek Lamed. It's not exactly how it's written here in the Gemara because it's lo tishma. It's to be v'lo tishma. V'im ifnei levavcha v'lo tishma v'nidachtav yishtarvita lelohim achirim va'avadatam. Yeah. So the same thing. Rashi, v'imifnei levavcha means pinui would be to empty something, lihit or to move away from it. Lihit ya'ish amash l'malat hakfar milachzor alav. If you're going to despair of what you already learned, meaning you're not going to go back to learn it again. So shuvot tishma mishativna libcha tefana libcha levatala rather. You're going to empty your heart to frivolity, to emptiness. Shuv ein mashmin otcha. You won't be able to learn it again. That's the basic point. You have to keep the fires burning means also to do a chazara. So why are these statements here? What have to do with Masechet Sukka? They have to do with Rabbi Zera, Itam, or Rabbi Chanina, which that was at the bottom of the page. He was Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa, So it repeated, so it's all there's 2 other teachings. These we throw in. Okay, so we learned it. Not much else to say about it. So we move to the next section, which has more halachic content. So now we come to the idea of miyad tinokot. You remember in the Mishnah 45a, there's a last line there that talks about what happens on the 7th day. It seems to be the 7th day after we're done with all the ceremonies and the Kiyum mitzvahs, etc. 45a Mishnah, end of the Mishnah. Miyad tinokot shomtin et lulavehen ve'ochlin et shogehen, which could be read as, doesn't have to be, from the hands of the of the children, do we take away or grab the lulavim and eat their etrogim? That's one reading of it. That's Rashi's reading. Look on 45a. We have to see the Rashi and the Tosfot here that I wanted to see before, because it's going to help inform us for a lot of discussion, which turns out now we may not get to tonight, but there's always next week. Mishnah, Mem Hey Amud Aleph, Rashi. Miyad tinokot shomtinat lulavein. It's the narrow lines, probably about a third of the way down the page, plus minus. Miyad tinokot shomtinat lulavein. Hagdolim shomtin et lulavei haktanim miyadam bashvi'i. The grown-ups take away, they release the lulavim of the children from the hands of the children on the seventh day, meaning after davening's over. And etrogena, they eat the etrogim belonging to the children. Shel tinokot ve'ein badavar lo mishum gazel. It's not considered a thievery. V'lo mishum darchei shalom. Why? Why isn't it not either thievery or because of, just as a matter of peace? You shouldn't take things away from people. Shikach nagu machmat simcha. This is what they would do because of the simcha of Sukkot. A lot. That's strange. That's what Rashi says. Now Tosfot, same page, 45a. I'm 45a right here. Tosfot. Rashi, we saw Tosfot opens by just quoting Rashi and taking issue, or at least explaining something else. You're gonna. This is quite something. So Tosfot explained. Miyad tinokot shomtin lulavein, lulavei tinokot shomtin hagdolim miyadan, ve'ochlin etrogen shel tinokot, ve'im bedavar gezel, lo mishum darchei shalom, lekach el shekach nagu bo machmat simcha. Kach pirish bekuntris. If you didn't understand that, it's exactly what I said a moment ago from Rashi. Tosfot quoted it verbatim. Then, v'yesh lilmod mikan. From here we learn le'otan bachurim shirochvim basusim likrat chatan. V'nilchamim ze im ze v'kor'in bigdo shel chaveiro u'mekalkel lo suso shehein peturin shekach nagu machmat simchat chatan. So let me say it in one word: jousting. Exactly. People, Tosfot's telling you that there was a minhag at the wedding. You're like, now they have there was that thing from the 80s and the 90s. I did it with Rabbi Linzer just for old time's sake with the bull. We got one guy to go like this, and the other one's holding it. Okay, they had
It
people
was a lot earlier than the 80s and 90s.
What?
We did it back in the 60s.
No,
and
I know it
70s.
was old. I think it like went out in the 90s or something. I was trying to bring it back. It was older than that, but it's even older than that. In the Middle Ages, they had people on horseback. Kates and Rock and Lifnei Akala, and the chassan sitting there. The chassan had a little party, and they're jousting with each other, and they're running at each other with the horses. And if they rip each other's clothes or they wreck the horse, it was time of Simchas Chassan. That's what happens. It's like an assumed risk. I mean, could you imagine? I don't, like what's the horse doing on the dance floor? What are two horses doing on the dance floor? Why are they running at each other? That's what it describes right here. I mean, it's astounding. It's astounding. Ve'od yesh lomar, but further, say Tosfot, against Rashi, Demat nitin lo ayri klal she'echatfu hagedolim yadan shel tinokot. That this Mishnah has nothing to do with grown-ups taking things from children. That's not what's going on in this Mishnah. Rather, ela miyad klomar la'alter. Miyad here means not from the hand of, but immediately. Immediately, hatinokot shomtin lulavei atzman. The kids take the lulav out mitocha arava, from the grouping of the arava. You know why? Lefi shehal lulav aroch, because the lulav is very long. V'sochakin bo. I mean, that's so obvious. Everyone's sword fighting with it. You think it was only invented, that we used to have the flags from Simchas Torah. We have them sometimes a little bit. Don't tell the kids, but in my day, those flags didn't last because in about 5 seconds, every kid was like rolling it up and seeing if they could joust with somebody else. That's what they were doing on the seventh day of Sukkot. The children, miyad, tells us what to say, miyad tinokot shomtin et lulavein. Immediately, the children ran to take out the lulav. And you know what they did? Etrogein hayu ochlin, and they would eat the etrog. It's very pungent. Let's make a contest. Who can eat more etrog? I don't know, whatever it is, but it's something. It wasn't throwing it. It just says they would eat it. V'hashta nicha Now we can understand hadaparach begemara limanda amar etrog bashvi'i mutter. Now we can understand that the fact that the Gemara will say on 46b, which is our sugya, that an etrog on the seventh day, there's one of the opinions is going to be that the etrog on the seventh day of Sukkot, meaning on Hoshana Rabbah, after you finished using it, one of the opinions, Machloket Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, you could use it for anything you want. You want to make the jam of the etrog on that day, the seventh day, go right ahead. You know why? You finished with it already. And if you have this reading, Tosfot say, of the Mishnah, then that supports their view. Not me from the hand of miyad, from the hand of the children, but miyad, immediately, techafu miyad, immediately. The children run, it's finished, let's go. Take out the lulav, they're jousting, and they're biting, one hand they're fighting, and they're eating the etrog with the other hand. I'm imagining that, right? To the consternation of the parents, but that's what they're doing. So you'll understand, v'hasta nicha hadaparach begemara, 46b, lamanda amar etrog b'shvi mutter, the hachamashma, tinokot in gedolim lo. Maybe, because the question, we're going to see it in the Gemara now, the question against the person who says that they can eat it right away, the etrog, when you're done, has to answer for the fact that the Mishnah went out of its way to tell you that children play with the lulav. Children play with the etrog. Who doesn't get to use the lulav and the etrog for their personal use? The gedolim, the people who are over the age of minority. So the hachamashma tinokot in gedolim lo. Uva kuntris in Rashi, the chak lefaresh the hachi parich. And Rashi, he's going to be forced, and it's a forced explanation, say Tosfot, to explain that this is really the question. Tinokot davka shelo huktza mitzvah gemura. That it's specifically mentioning the tinokot, because the tinokot, their use of lulav and etrog that they have that belongs to them, it's not actually for a mitzvah gemura, right? Because they don't actually have the mitzvah of lulav and etrog, the mitzvah of chinuch, but it's not actually mitzvah. Aval shel gedolim huktzil mitzvah gemura asur in kol hayom, right? So Rashi wants to claim that that's the chiluk, and the gedolim mitzvah gemura, mitzvah lulav, mitzvah etrog, and therefore that goes for the entire day. V'kasha the imkain havil memar to tinokot in the gedolim lo. If that was true, then it should have said of the children's yes, and of the gedolim not. There isn't actually such a chiluk. So Tosfot say, we think Rashi's explanation of this whole thing, where the grown-ups grab it from the children, is kind of forced. It doesn't really work. With what? With the Gemara in 46b. Now we'll go to the Gemara 46b. We got a little Vorspice, a little preview just now. It turns out we will get a little bit into the Gemara. You understand what's going on? And the Gemara now is going to pick up the idea, what happens on the seventh day of Sukkot, when you're done with the mitzvah of the mitzvot of Daled Minim, a mitzvah rather, one mitzvah of Daled Minim, can you use the items or not? I'm Rabbi Yochanan, so I'm now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down. Miyad tinokot v'chulu. That's the part we're focused on. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Etrog b'shvi asur, b'shmini mutter. Sukka afilu b'shmini asura. So Rabbi Yochanan holds that on the day of Hoshana Rabbah, you want to put the etrog up on the shelf. It's going to be forbidden till the next day. But on Shmini Atzeret, Gegis and Tehait, you can bite it, you can, whatever you want to do, you can eat it. But the Sukkah is also the whole day of Shmini Atzeret as well. Our assumption here, for now, working assumption, which will be challenged later, not for now, is this is talking about in Eretz Yisrael. Working assumption. Reish Lakish disagreed. For Reish Lakish Amar, Etrog, afilu b'shvi nami mutter. The etrog is permissible even on the seventh day. B'mai kamiflage. What's the argument about? Mar savar mitzvata it katzai. One of them holds it was made muktzah for the purpose of its mitzvah. And once the mitzvah has been discharged, you don't get extra credit for doing it later. You did it already. Seventh day. You don't need the mitzvah again. Umar savar lekula yoma it katzai. And the other opinion holds once it was used for a mitzvah on a given day, it retains its charge, so to speak, its mitzvah status through to the end of that day.
Well, somebody else could use it, even if you were already done with it.
Somebody else could use it. Let's say you wanted to use it, though. Would you be allowed? No, it has a status for the rest of that day. That's it. That's the idea.
No, I meant someone else could use it for the mitzvah.
Yeah, someone else could use it for the mitzvah. That's true. That's a good point. It's a good point. Now, this was a general argument about the seventh day. The proof the exhibit A coming into the courtroom is our Mishnah. The Mishnah says the children and the Etrog and the Lulav and the Etrog. Again, Rashi's reading the Gedolim are taking it, which implies strongly maybe they're taking it from their hands because they're grabbing it because it's no longer, it's only muktzah for that period of time. It's only muktzah for that period of time. Why don't the Gedolim take their own? What are they taking from the children? They're forced to take from the children because theirs still has the status, but the children's never had status of being with the mitzvah status of lulav, etrog, etc. That's Rashi's rendering. Tosfot, no. Miyad means the children take it out right away, and that's the issue. Eitvei, Reish Lakish lo Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish, who says that the etrog is permissible right away, says to Rabbi Yochanan, hey, wait a second. Miyad tinokot shomti lulavein va'ochan etrogein. That's on the seventh day. My love, hu adin legedolim. Isn't that true for the gedolim as well? Lo, he answers, tinokot davka. No, it's specifically the children. Again, Rashi's rendering, because they're not really obligated in the mitzvah to the same degree at all. Ikeda Amrei, Eitvei Rabbi Yochanan, Reish Lakish really was the opposite. Rabbi Yochanan, who says it's muktzah all day, said to Reish Lakish, miyada tinokot shom to l'levein va'ochlin etrogein, tinokot in gedolim lo. Right? There you see, Rabbi Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, see they had to take from the children? See they couldn't do it on their own? Hu adin da'afil gedolim. Right? This is the din also with regard to gedolim, with the grown-ups as well for theirs. But v'hai tekatane tinokot urcha demil tekatane. So it was just, that's sort of the way of speaking. So it just talked about the tinokot as such, but it didn't. The davka part here is with regard to what the gedolim are and are not doing. In a way, yeah. They're a kosher lulav and etrog. That's the assumption. Not chinuch sets like they have the chinuch sets. But
What did he say? What did he say?
Lulav and etrog are real lulav and etrog. So they are. But if you look at Rashi, Rashi's going to tell us that maybe the status of these mitzvah objects is not really on a par with the others, right? Now, if you look with me at Rashi, we'll stop here in the Gemara. I don't think we'll get any farther. I, of course, had big plans. We're going to get to the bottom of the page. We're going to see Tosfot Etrog b'Shvi Aser. It'll be next time we meet. Look with me, look with me at Rashi. Rashi writes here the word asur. It's the first word on that line. It's the narrow lines of Rashi, about 10 lines into the narrow lines. The first word is tishma, quoting from the pasuk from the Devarim Lamed. Asur la'achila, right? Va'afila achash yatzaba. It's forbidden to eat it, and even after you were yotzik. The mefarish time kasavar l'chol shivat yamim itkatzai. The assumption is that it was made muktzah for all 7 days, and this is still part of the 7 days. Sukka fil b'shmini asura lahasaka. On the 8th day, you're not allowed to even use it for burning it for firewood. Further along, the Gemara will explain. We won't see that tonight. Why should that be? Why is the sukkah more strict than the lulav? Right? One of the Rishonim or Achronim, I'm trying to remember who it is now. I saw one of the anthologies asks the very obvious question. How about another problem why you can't burn parts of your sukkah on the 8th day of Sukkot? It's Yontif, and you're not allowed to deconstruct an ohel. You can't destroy an ohel. So you're pulling things out of your sukkah. It's soter. It's soter. It's a malacha d'oraita. How could you do it? So the answer that's given is that the only case that would possibly work is that somewhere toward the end of Sukkot, your sukkah fell down. And you were possibly going to still put it back up before the end of Sukkot, but you didn't get around to it. So now it's not an issue of soter, it's a heap of materials, but we still have the problem that it's huksel mitzvato, possibly from the beginning of Sukkot. Again, begging the question, but it's now the 8th day and the 7th day, and that's what the Gemara will explain later why the 8th day in Israel. Never mind chutz la'aretz. Don't give me this chutz la'aretz answer. That's going to be later. That's much later, not now. Va'afilu b'shvi nami muteret. Right. The other opinion is even on the 7th day, it should be not muteret, but really mutter. Right. Mishyatza bo, according to the Bach. Ve'eno omeid. Right. Lemitzvah od dekasav lemitzvata itkatzai v'tula. Right. Maybe once you were yotzei and it's no longer standing around to be a mitzvah. And Art, just to answer your point, which was a good one. I wonder if it means here if someone else happens along. Sure. But if I want to now use my etrog to eat it, I was go to the mitzvah. So if someone else happens along and uses it, great. But it's not yiketzai the mitzvah for other people when it would belong to me, kind of thing. I think. Otherwise, I think that's what it is. Now Rashi, miyad tinokot shomtin b'shvi kai. It's the seventh day, but matnitin. That's what the Mishnah was talking about on Hoshana Rabbah. Rashi's just telling you if you're too lazy to turn back page and a half. Let me just remind you what we saw in the Mishnah. We weren't so lazy we looked it up, but okay. V'yesh mefarshim. Some explain miyad tinokot kolomar miyad achar sium mitzvat lulav hatinokot shomtin lulavehen kolomar menichim otan. Stop. Wait a second. Rashi just said some interpret that the word miyad means immediately. Don't you remember, like Tosfot said?
Yeah.
So some of the achronim on this Rashi say Tosfot clearly didn't have this manuscript of Rashi. Otherwise, they would have just said Kidim Mefarish Bekuntras.
Right.
Right? They made it sound like they were arguing against Rashi, but now Rashi's himself saying it. Yes, Mefarshim. So I don't know. I'm not an expert in manuscripts. I don't, but it's possible they didn't have the manuscript with these words. It's possible that the student of Rashi in the days of the Bali Tosfot was sitting in the base medrash. He was learning with the Bali Tosfot, and he wrote in the margin of his commentary of Rashi, which is after all called a kuntras, a notebook for a reason. And he wrote in the margin, V'yesh Mefarshim. Who's the Yesh Mefarshim? It's Tosfot from 2 pages ago. He wrote it in, a page and a half ago. He wrote it in. And after he wrote it in, then came the printers. They put it in. Yeah, and you don't know. So otherwise, by the way, what's Shomtin mean? Shomtin doesn't mean to grab. It means to release something, like Shemitah, the release, Shemitah Ksafim, releasing of the money, right? It gives the example here, right? Shomto umenicho bekeren zavit. Again, from elsewhere in Shas and Beitza, right? V'holchin v'ochlin atchogein ve'ein nira. The Amrinan, it says I don't think that's correct. Now again, is it Rashi speaking? Is it a Talmud of Rashi? I don't know, right? Is it maybe a defender of Rashi? Because now it's going to argue against that view. The Amrinan, we say, and it's not really Breshit Rabbah, it's Vayikra Rabbah, but what does it describe there? Has a medrash, Ma'aseh b'chasid echad shnatan dinar la'ani ve'knitato ishto ubarach. It's a story of a pious person who gave a coin to a poor person. The wife bothered him and chased him away. Right? So he didn't have how to sustain himself. B'shvi shel arava means in the 7th day of Sukkot. Halach v'shamat etrogin miyad tinokot. He went and he shamat. Here must mean grabbed. Kiditznan taman miyad tinokot shomtin. V'aya oto chasid over basfina derech krach echad. He went by ship. This indigent person with all of the collection of etrogim in his rucksack. V'hutzuchu lebeit hamelach etrogin the mitzvah l'refua umachron beyoker gadol v'chazal lebeito, and he sold them to the king's house wherever he was going. They needed it for some sort of salve, or maybe they needed it, for vitamin C. I don't know. And the people needed it for refuah. He sold it, made a killing, tons of money. V'chazal lebeito, he went back to his house. Therefore, Rashi here concludes it must be shomtin, must mean not to release, but to grab. Because Tosfot and this Yesh Mefarshim seem to say that miyad means immediately, shomtin l'veim is they release the lulav from the bundle. So he says, no, that can't be. Shamot, we have a medrash that describes it as grabbing, and it must be grabbing. That must be, it's really going on. Okay, I have to stop right here because I have the boys from Mitzva group coming to my house in a few minutes. I don't want to be late for them. But it's been wonderful. We will meet next week, God willing, in advance of the girls' bat mitzvah group next week, which is after our shir, but so it goes. I'm trying to cut myself into smaller and smaller pieces, slices, if you will. So far, so good. Well, that's all, friends.